And welcome to the demo of Cloudera Altus, our platform as a service offering. In this demo, we're going to take you through Altus as a data engineering experience. Altus is easy to use for both administrators and operators. It takes no time to set up your cluster, and you don't need to deal with operational overhead as your cluster is running. Jobs are first-class objects in Altus, meaning users can focus on workloads and data pipelines, the important stuff, rather than infrastructure. And you'll notice this early on in the demo once you get a look at the UI. Altus also makes it easy to troubleshoot failed or slow-running jobs. If something goes wrong, Altus will let you know what happened. No more sifting through log files dumped into cloud storage to determine root cause. Altus is part of our unified platform. As you'll see in the demo, the data processed in Altus and written back to S3 is immediately available for other applications in our stack, including Data Science Workbench. With Altus, data and metadata remain consistent, so any application can use it. Today, Altus delivers an enterprise-grade data engineering experience built on the most reliable platform for machine learning and analytics. If you're considering a cloud migration, Altus makes the move relatively easy and low risk because the same enterprise-grade platform that you run on-prem today is available in the cloud. Okay, let's move on to the demo. So here, we're going to do a simple analysis of hospital death rates versus state GDP. We took raw hospital death rate data from healthcare.gov and per capita state GDP data from Wikipedia. We dropped both datasets into Amazon S3 for storage. This demo will show Cloudera Altus cleaning, merging, and filtering the raw data into well-formatted data using Spark. Then we'll show how we can make this data available to data scientists through the Cloudera Data Science Workbench. Note that some portions of this demo have been sped up for time. Now I'd like to turn the demo over to Jennifer Wu. Jennifer?
When you first log into the Cloudera Altus console, you will land on the Altus dashboard. On the right side of this dashboard is a What's New section that describes the new features that have been released on the platform recently. In the center is a summary of the activity that has occurred within this account. So you'll see things like job activity, which contains all of the jobs that have been executed and their status in the past 24 hours. You'll also see a list of running clusters, and these are clusters that are available to you currently for you to run jobs. On the left-hand side is a navigational pane, which allows you to navigate into various sections of the Cloudera Altus console. In order to run a job in Cloudera Altus, the first thing you need to do is to have a cluster on which to run this job. So if I click on the cluster section, then I'll see all of the clusters that are currently available for me to run jobs on top of. Alternatively, I can create a new cluster on which to run this job. In order to create a cluster, I simply specify a cluster name, the service type, the CDH version, an environment in which to provision this cluster, and an environment maps into an AWS account in which this cluster will be provisioned. Then I specify the node configuration of this cluster. Worker nodes contain data nodes on them, and I can specify any of the M4, C4, R4 families. I specify a number of nodes to configure and optionally add additional EBS volumes onto this particular node. Compute-only worker nodes don't contain any data nodes on them and are used only for additional compute capacity on the cluster and are ideal when you want to use spot instance types to back the compute worker nodes. The system will also provision a master node and a Cloudera Manager instance on this cluster. Then you need to specify the credentials for the cluster. You first need an SSH key, and this SSH key is used in order to SSH onto the cluster after the cluster has been provisioned. You can also specify credentials for the Cloudera Manager instance so you can log into Cloudera Manager to monitor and troubleshoot your jobs. Now you can see that the cluster is being created, And after the cluster is created, you can then submit a job onto the cluster. Jobs in Cloudera Altus are first-class objects with a complete history of all of the jobs that have been executed and their status. You can submit a job or you can clone a job. If you clone a job, all of the job configurations will be pre-populated from the run in which you are cloning. You can submit jobs in single jobs or groups of jobs. With a group of jobs, these jobs will be executed in sequence as soon as compute capacity becomes available. Then you specify a job type, a logical name for the job, and then specify the application location in S3 as well as the class that's associated with the application. And then you specify the arguments, and in this case, this application takes an input directory for raw data and output directory for clean data on S3. The last thing you need to do is specify a cluster to which you want to run this job. And then you submit the job. Here you can see the job has been queued on the cluster for execution. If we want to see the raw data and the program which is being run, you can simply walk into the AWS S3 console to see the Medicare 2.1 jar file, which is the application that is going to process the raw GDP and hospital mortality rate data. If you look in the input directory, this will contain the raw data itself that needs to be processed. And here is the GDP and the hospital data that is in raw data format. After the application has been run, this particular application will write all of the merged output into an output directory on S3. So now if we look back on the Cloudera Altus console, we can see that the job is running. And if you want to view the state of the job, you can simply use a Cloudera manager that is on that cluster and view the state of the application. Here you can see that the application is in flight. Now the application has completed, and you can go back to the Cloudera Altus console and drill down into the job details, where you can see all the configurations in which the job was run. You can also see some workload analytics features on this particular job, so that when the cluster is no longer running and Cloudera Manager is no longer in existence, you can still see all of the execution details with all of the log files, as well as things like baseline deviations from the baseline of a job that is run recurringly along different metrics, and trends of this particular job that has run multiple times. If I look into AWS S3, then I should be able to see an output directory where all of the cleaned data resides. And now that the data is clean, then I can use different tools to gather insights on this data. In this case, I will use a Cloudera Data Science Workbench utility to pull the data from S3 and visualize this using a Python script. Here you can see the Python script is taking the data from S3 and visualizing this data which shows the GDP, the death rates as a function of GDP. Cloudera Data Science Workbench also allows you to share your results. By simply cutting and pasting a URL. And you can share all of your results with your coworkers. So this concludes the presentation of using Cloudera Altus to run a Spark job to process raw data into clean formatted data, which can be used by downstream and for downstream analysis, including using a tool like Data Science Workbench.